2, 3, 4. Let me tell you about PuckPedia, stats, contracts, and caps. It's all there for you. One-stop shop for your hockey information. It's a hockey sensation. So log on, log on, log on. If you give a puck, go to PuckPedia.com.
Welcome to episode 8 of the PuckPedia Hockey Show. Today we welcome on our pal and recurring guest, Jason Bukala of the Pro Hockey Group. Our friend Bukes was boots on the ground this weekend at some of the rookie games. We dive into some of the Montreal Canadiens prospects, including the odds-on favorite for the Calder Trophy, Ivan Demidov. He had a spectacular game, and Bukes is giving us the breakdown of what makes him so effective and why he's the odds-on favorite for the Calder Trophy. We touch on a couple of the other Canadian prospects. We also dive into the Toronto Maple Leafs and Easton Cowan. Does he have a chance to make the team right out of training camp? We also touch on the Ottawa Senators and Winnipeg Jets prospects as well. Then we dive into the future of the NCAA and CHL with some of the top prospects like Gavin McKenna moving from Medicine Hat in the WHL this season to playing in the NCAA with Penn State. We also have Porter Martone going over to Michigan State and draft eligible 2026 Keaton Verhoeff moving over to North Dakota. So Bukes gives us a rundown of what he thinks the future is for these leagues and how that landscape is going to play out and how the scouts is going to impact them moving forward and how they're going to focus on this upcoming draft. It's a great episode packed with a lot of good insights, and without further ado, let's drop the puck. We now welcome on our first recurring guest in the PuckPedia Hockey Show history that isn't the founder, Hart Levine. It's our good pal. If you've watched NHL Network, Sportsnet, you see this guy all over. It's Jason Bukala from the Pro Hockey Group. Jason, how's it going?
Keith, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm ready to get the season started here.
Exactly. We're in the middle of September right now. Training camps are just about to get underway. We got rookie camps that just happened the past weekend. But Books, first question, how was your summer? Did you get to enjoy it?
Summer was fantastic. A little time up at the cottage. Northern Ontario and Canada, we call them camps, not cottages. And it was great. It was great to get up to camp for a few trips and a lot of golf, a little boating, a little bit of everything.
You see my Callaway hat too. I also partake in some golf over the summer, but we're back in action now. The NHL season is right around the corner. I think we should just dive right into this. So Jason Bukala has a nice partnership with PuckPedia. He has his Pro Hockey Group scouting reports on our website, which is very helpful to both partnerships. I think it's a great thing that we've got going here. And you were boots on the ground this past weekend for some of the rookie games that happened. So without further ado, I think we should just get right into some of those rookie games. Talk about some of the things you like, things you didn't like from some of the players. I think we want to start with the Montreal Canadiens. A lot of people are really excited about this guy, Ivan Demidov. He had a little sprinkle of NHL action in the playoffs last season. You went to the game. He played Saturday for the Canadiens, but didn't play Sunday. Tell us a little bit about what you liked from Ivan Demidov's game.
Pretty much everything, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, the kid is going to be a Calder candidate for Rookie of the Year this year, in my estimation. Pretty much everybody's, I believe. And bigger, stronger still than he was even when he ended last season. He kind of toyed with the opposition, to be honest with you, in the one game that he played. He ended up with a goal and 2 assists. He made plays in small areas like that one, like off the back of the net.
The poor defender.
Yeah, the poor defender did a faceplant going the other way. It's, he just this is the one off the half wall late in the game to tie it, obviously 3-3, and he just took over the third period. So what do you like about him? Well, he can't teach offense. His offensive skill set is high end. It's very elite. This is a future star in the National Hockey League, in my estimation. He craves attention. He craves the puck. He craves big moments. And, it's only a rookie game, but you can see how motivated he is to make a mark early in the season. And the Montreal Canadiens have to be ecstatic. I'm still confused as to how he fell to number 5 in the draft a couple years ago, but Montreal are the beneficiary of that. And Ivan Demidov is going to slide right into the top 6 and be a staple in their top line, I believe, for years to come. Offensively, we know what he can do. Defensively, it's a work in progress. It's not that he's cutting any corners. I wouldn't say that for any reason. It's just that that's not his area of expertise, right? So average plus defensively. He'll be challenged by the coaching staff in his first main NHL camp to work on the details, tracking back, making sure his offensive zone exits are on time, and making sure he's not blowing the offensive zone to look for offense. But having said that, all offensive guys in the NHL that are of his pedigree, they got a little cheat in their game, and you have to give them a little rope, right? So it was awesome. It was awesome, Keith. It was a lot of fun. The arena had 20,000 people in it, and they were singing his name. It was like a playoff atmosphere.
That's awesome. And yeah, I was actually on the phone with someone in the Montreal Canadiens front office on Monday, and he asked me over the weekend if I saw the games, which I didn't. And I was like, what'd you make of Demidov? And he said simply, he was like, he was spectacular. Like, we didn't even need him to play on Sunday because of how well he played on Saturday. And I think, yeah, like you mentioned, he's going to be a superstar in this league, dropping to 5 in that draft. I think a lot of that had to do with the Russia factor. You saw it with Matvei Michkov the year before, superstar player, but the uncertainty with, being able to get boots on the ground scouting that. Some teams were scared of how that would translate over to the North American game. And now you're seeing some of those teams regret those decisions, unfortunately, but Montreal does become the beneficiary of that. One thing you did mention too, before we get into a couple other Canadians, is the Calder Trophy. So our friends over at Coolbet have the Calder odds for the upcoming season. If we can get that graphic here on the screen, Ivan Demidov is a plus 175 favorite to take home the Calder Trophy. The next highest favorite is Zeev Buium of the Minnesota Wild, who's a 14-1 on those odds. You got other guys like Michael Misa, Isaac Hauer, Matthew Schaefer, and Jimmy Snuggerud to round out the top 6 there. Also, if you go to puckpedia.com/coolbet, you can get in on the action today on these Calder odds, as well as a bunch of other fun future bets for the NHL season, as well as other sports. But Bukes, what do you make of these odds? Is it really going to be that much of a runaway for Mr. Demidov to take home the Calder this year? Or do you think any of these other guys can give him a run for their money?
Well, anything's possible. I mean, Lane Hudson came out of nowhere, as we know, sort of out of nowhere. A lot of people were discounting his trajectory to a degree, and anything's possible. But I do believe that this list and the way that Coolbet has laid it out here is pretty accurate. And that's no disrespect to the other players on this list. Demidov has got more experience than anybody that you see on that list in terms of playing in the KHL already before he came to the National Hockey League, and obviously hit the ground running last spring. So did Zeev Buium. With the Minnesota Wild, he's going to play some heavy minutes there, and they're in a great spot when you look at Brock Faber and Zeev Buium being potential kind of pillars going forward on the back end there for the Minnesota Wild. Misa, highly motivated. He wanted to challenge for number 1 overall last year. And then, of course, Schaefer. Isaac Howard, I don't want to go past him. He's going to land maybe in the top 6 of the Edmonton Oilers forward group if he has a good training camp here. And how nice is that if you get to ride shotgun beside Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. Schaefer, obviously the face of the franchise going forward on the island. He's going to be more challenged, I think, than anybody on this list just because of the fact that he's a defenseman. It's a heavy lift. And then Snuggerud, who just flat out knows how to score. He's a great shooter. He's got a taste of it already. This is a great list. Demidov, for me, is the runaway favorite, and I think Coolbet's got it right. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, I think the main takeaway for me is not only how much favorite Ivan Demidov is, but the other guys that you listed. I think the league is in good hands in the future. A lot of these guys are really talented players. They're going to have impacts on their teams almost immediately, minus Isaac Howard and maybe Snuggerud, but Schaefer, Misa, Buium, they're just drafted in the last year or two. And so they're able to come in and probably from day one, get a spot on the NHL roster and move forward and have impacts on some of those teams, like the Minnesota Wild, for example, like playoff contender this year. He's going to play a big part of that moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody who's a Minnesota Wild fan or anybody who's just a hockey fan, Zeev is a poster child for me for the way that you play the game the right way. And what I mean by that is that there's A games and B games in the National Hockey League. And on their good days, Zeev's going to produce some offense. He's going to push the play offensively. He's going to pinch down to extend plays in the offensive zone. And it's going to result in the puck in the back of the opponent's net. But having said that, on his days where he's not really feeling it offensively, this kid is ultra competitive, like maybe one of the most competitive prospects I've scouted in the last few years. There are some others that are on the come see. Brady Martin, who was just drafted by the Nashville Predators, comes to mind. But having said that, the thing with Zeev is that he comes at you in waves. There's so many different attributes that he can offer, and that's what makes him such a great prospect and so highly valuable. And to a man though, when I'm looking at this, they're all programmed that way. They really are, and you're right. The league is in good hands because you're going to have guys that are going to pop even on the days that they're not maybe producing at their elite element. And that's good news for all those teams that own those players.
Definitely. And like we mentioned, so you were boots on the ground to some of these games over the weekend. Ivan Demidov was the key story for that. But let's talk about a couple other Canadians that you were really excited about. We got Jacob Fowler, who was the goaltender at BC last season, sporting a 1.63 goals against average, 940 save percentage, as well as David Reinbacher. He was in Laval last season, 5th overall draft pick in 2023. What were a couple of things you liked from either of those guys' games?
Let's start with Reinbacher for a second. He missed a significant amount of time last year after suffering a knee injury at training camp, and he came back at the end of the year. He looks, he's got the size, so he's got the height already, but he looks much stronger. So in his core and in his explosiveness, his leg injury doesn't look to have held him back from what should be a good start to his training camp here with the Habs. He was really good on the weekend, Keith. Transported the puck, extended plays in the offensive zone, kind of rotated really well. What I like about him is that for a big man, when you're 6'3" or so, your length, you're long, right? So you can expose pucks with your length if you're not mobile, agile, and he can move east-west on the offensive blue line to open up shooting and passing lanes. I thought he did it really effectively well. There was a few hiccups defensively, timing more than anything. Again, it wasn't an effort thing. It's early in the process here. But high-end compete, he looks like he's going to be in the mix to get NHL games early. We'll see what Montreal does. I'm curious because they're looking for a 2C somewhere along the line, and they got an embarrassment of riches in this organization. I don't know if they're going to move a guy off their NHL roster to be determined, but guys like Reinbacher, they'll push for a job and they'll make those decisions a little bit harder. Fowler, he was unbelievable. Honestly, he played both games, half a game on Saturday, half a game on Sunday. Obviously, you recited his statistics coming out of Boston College last year, the top goalie in the NCAA. I love his crease composure. Man, like he uses his size to his advantage. And what I mean by that is that at 6'2", 215 or so pounds, he front shooters. He sits tall in his butterfly, and when he moves laterally, like really quickly, because he's got great feet. When you do that, and then you front the shooter, like you're tall to the shot, you just take away so much space. And then he eats pucks. His rebound control was spot on. He honestly, I've gone through a process here. Sam Ottenbo is a starter in Montreal. We watched him come through in Florida, when we drafted him. I think goalies take 2 contract cycles before they settle in to be NHL goalies. Spencer Knight settled in a little bit quicker. I honestly think that Fowler is going to be pushing for a job sooner than later. As a matter of fact, he looks NHL ready to me right now. So again, Montreal, to go along with the rest of the embarrassment or riches that they have, they're going to be strong in goal.
Yeah, and you look at one of the moves they made, right, in the offseason, they traded Logan Mailloux to St. Louis and received Bolduc in return because they have such an embarrassment of riches on the back end there, which definitely helped them, bolster up their winger group moving forward for this upcoming season, a guy who could probably play in their middle six for them. Let's dive into let's go to the Toronto Maple Leafs. A lot of Canadian fans, Toronto's the team everyone wants to talk about. One player in particular fans are excited to see is Easton Cowan. He's a former first-round pick of the Maple Leafs a couple years ago. He had 69 points in 46 games with London last season. Toronto's in an interesting spot where they have a lot of NHL forwards on their roster already. Is Easton Cowan a guy you think can crack the NHL lineup this year? Or is he a guy that's going to have to play in either the AHL or back in juniors this upcoming season?
Juniors is not going to be an option. He's definitely ready to graduate to the pro game. He's done everything he can at the OHL level in London, including win Player of the Year in the CHL, obviously a Memorial Cup champion. He's highly decorated, and he was the engine in London. There's no question about that. Is he ready for the National Hockey League? I think he's close. I really do. So what I like about him here coming out of this prospects camp was another player that's clearly put in the work in the summer. He's definitely stronger. Okay, he's never been a poor skater. He's always been pretty quick. 2 years ago, he burst onto the scene in his first training camp, and almost made the NHL roster. He was that good 2 years ago. Last year was a little bit of a setback. He's definitely reset his trajectory and put in the work, but he's going to need some time in the American Hockey League to really define what he can do. I think he's got the hockey brain, the hockey sense to play up and down in the lineup. He's definitely got that offensive pedigree, but there's certain things in the pro level you really have to adjust to. Shift length, for one. You can't afford to be gassed in the offensive zone and not track back on time defensively. The game's too quick and it's too accurate at the pro level, and you get odd man rushes against, and the puck's in your net. So he's going to have to make some adjustments there. He also can't afford to get distracted. He's going to be challenged physically. People are going to be in his face all the time, and he's going to have to learn to be the dog on the bone that I know he can be. Because when he's at his best, he's a real pain in the you know what. He never goes away, and then he adds the offense to it. So I like this camp on the weekend, or his game on the weekend. He only played the one time. We'll see where it goes from here, but he's going to push. He's going to be in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. The Maple Leafs, they made some moves in the offseason. They obviously lost Mitch Marner, but they ended up getting Nicholas Waugh from Vegas in that sign and trade. They also got Matthias McKelly from Utah as a free agent. So a couple guys that I think could play factors, but also could possibly hinder Easton's chances to make that opening night roster and remain a staple on the NHL. But injuries happen during the season, so we'll see if he gets his shot with the Marlies and then works his way up to the NHL level. There was one more player from Toronto you really liked over the weekend. It was Ben Danford. So he's a defenseman. He had 25 points in 61 games for Oshawa last season. So not a giant offensive production, but definitely solid. What did you like about his game this weekend?
There's some defensemen that are on the come see at the NHL level. Dmitry Simashev out in Utah comes to mind as well. And these guys don't score a lot. They're not point producers. But what they do is they make your unit better. They insulate other people, and they do the small things that allow your team to have team success. Okay, and in Danford's case, size is there. He's 6'2". He's over 200 pounds. I really like, again, that his skating looks to have gone to another level. And he's never been a poor skater, so I don't want anybody to misunderstand. Straight lines, he's been fine. So straight lines going forward, straight lines going backwards. I did feel in the past that his agility, when I talk about Reinbacher, how he opens up space on the offensive blue line, I felt like Ben could have worked on more of his agility in his small area game, and he's done that. He's definitely improved that area. Make no mistake, though, this guy is a two-way shutdown defenseman on projection. He's hard to play against. He's going to block shots. He's going to eat pucks. And then he's going to also have that physical element. He's got tons of pushback. He'll gap up. He'll kill plays on zone entries on the defensive blue line. And he'll be out there on the first penalty killing unit. So these are, you think about guys like Chris Tanya that Toronto has, a veteran player like that. Danford can only hope to have that type of a career, but that's the type of player type that I'm trying to project and draw a picture for your listeners. And he looked good. He was really solid, managed the puck adequately, and we'll see where it goes. People, when they look at first-round draft picks, even when they're late in the draft, he was 31st overall. When they look at that and they're expecting that pop offensively, that star pop offensively, it's okay to build your team different ways, and he's one of those components of making your roster better.
You look at defensemen too around the league, like a Jacob Slavin type or a Gus Forsling, guys who don't have that offensive punch, but they're immensely valuable to their teams. They're some of the top defensemen across the NHL. They're used in all situations. They're defending the team's top lines every night. They're playing the penalty kill. They're playing the last couple minutes protecting a lead. Those guys have immense value in the NHL, especially in today's NHL. And so I think just because you draft a guy in the first round who doesn't have that offensive pop, if he transitions into one of those players, he'll have a long and steady career in the NHL.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You brought up two great names there. Those two studs on the back end in Florida and Carolina. I mean, what do those rosters look like when those guys are out of the lineup, or if they are? And they're not out of the lineup. Those guys stay healthy. I'll go back to the Tanev example. Like when he's not in the lineup in Calgary or Toronto, how big of a gap or how big of a hole is there in the back end? So, that's how I project Ben Danford, and that's where I see his value. They reached on him for me, and that's no disrespect to the player. For me, on my list builder that year, they reached. But, it's up to him to play the game and play the game the right way, and he looks prepared, so good on him.
Definitely. And we'll see what his impact is on the Maple Leafs either next year or in the upcoming seasons as he progresses and develops. Let's shift gears a little bit to the Ottawa Senators, another team who you watched over the weekend. And Carter Yakemchuk, who was drafted 7th overall in 2024. He had 49 points in 56 games with Calgary in the WHL last season. What were you liking about his game over the weekend? Is he a guy who's going to have a chance to crack this Ottawa lineup, or is he like a year or two away?
No, I think he's going to have a chance to crack the lineup this year. I really do. Some people were a little bit put out with when he was selected as high as he was in Ottawa, but Ottawa has a plan. And they brought some big men, trees, as a matter of fact, to the tournament on the weekend on the back end. They had 3 6'7" defensemen on their roster, and Yakemchuk looks small at 6'3", 210 pounds. So they have a player type that they're looking for. But what Carter can do that the others can't is he can rush the puck. He makes plays in the offensive zone. He scored a fantastic goal against the Toronto Maple Leafs where he waited out pressure and kind of had the goaltender slide out of position and the shot blocker slide out, and he just casually deposited a backhand into the back of the net. He's in a little bit of a unicorn. He'll drop the mitts if required. He can kill penalties. Now, listen, he's going to have to work on how to kill penalties properly at the pro level. He can do it in junior, but there's going to be a process in pro. It's totally different. You got Ovi ripping pucks on the flank now. It's a little bit different, right? So, but big body, long reach, really good skater, great character, really good on the weekend, played to his identity, two-way defenseman, better than secondary offensive upside, can play in all situations. But if he makes a team, you'll see the bulk of his time be even strength and probably on the second unit power play to start his career. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and exactly. All you can do is take what you learn at the junior level, use that to kind of develop, and hopefully it translates to the next level. It doesn't always, but again, these players are putting in the work in the offseason. It seems like now more than ever, and a lot of these guys are definitely trying to make that leap to the NHL. We'll see if he makes the team in the training camp in the next couple of weeks. Let's wrap this up here, Bukes, with a couple of goaltenders who caught your eye over the weekend in both Ottawa and Winnipeg. So we had Jackson Parsons. He had a 2.24 goals against average and a 920 save percentage, which Kitchener last season. He was an undrafted player. And then we have Dominic Divincentiis. I don't know how to say the name, but it's he's in Winnipeg system right now. He played with Manitoba in the AHL and Norfolk in the ECHL last season. He was a 7th rounder in 2022. What were you liking about both of their games? Do they have a shot to translate at the NHL level? Maybe not next season, obviously, in Winnipeg, especially with Connor Hellebuck there, but maybe in the upcoming seasons. Or can these teams use them maybe as trade chips for teams that need goaltenders? Because if you look at the NHL level, goaltending is a tough position, and a lot of teams could use better goaltending.
Yeah, so great effort on Dominic's name. I'm just going to call him the Teflon Don for now. We'll go with that.
I like that a lot.
We'll introduce a new nickname for him. Let's start with him. Now, here's something that's curious. I really enjoy scouting goaltenders, and it as far as scouting in general isn't an exact science. We can take all the data, the analytics, and obviously the human nature into it. It's not an exact science, as you know and I know. The thing with Dominic is when he played major junior in North Bay and he had a real good, solid junior career, there were nights that I would go in there and he got sloppy in the net. Like he was not utilizing his size. He's 6'2", 195 pounds. When big goalies start moving around too much in the blue paint and they get outside the post, you lose your size advantage, right? Because you have to travel further back to make a second save or, whatever the situation is in front of you with the puck. So I felt like his crease composure had to go to another level, and it really has. Wow, was he ever good on the weekend? So similar to Jacob Fowler with the Montreal Canadiens, what impressed me most about Dom was the way that he used his size to his advantage, stayed between his posts, which was great to see. But he has really worked hard on his skating and his coordination. So his lateral push, like to get up on his toes and push across the crease, he's much more quick, and he's quicker, and he's more composed at the same time. That's not easy to do when the game's moving fast in front of you, right? You gotta button that style up. Great rebound control. He made some spectacular saves in his start on the weekend. So I think Winnipeg has got something there. I don't anticipate either one of these goalies, Parsons or Divincentiis, the Teflon Don, getting thrown out in trade discussion at all. I think that this is what they need. They need that second layer. So let's move on to Jackson Parsons, who was nothing short of spectacular in the Ontario Hockey League for the Kitchener Rangers last year, top goalie in the CHL. He took his time to make a decision as to where he wanted to go, and Ottawa's got a good one here. This kid is 6'2", 205 pounds, highly competitive. It's taken him time to get to where he's at right now. So I actually believe there's another level still to go with him. But he's so fluid. His low net coverage with his pads, okay? Like when you go down on the butterfly, the way that he was kicking out pucks and fronting them with his toes, was absolutely outstanding. And we factor in his athletic ability and his competitiveness, and it's only his first Ottawa Senators camp. He looks like he'll get NHL exhibition games here in the next couple of weeks. He's going to go to the American League and get his feet wet down there. But I'm going to keep a close eye on him. They got a good one in Jackson Parsons.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for these players, right? They're getting kind of their first taste of some NHL action. Most of these guys will play in a couple exhibition games in the next couple of weeks and then probably either go back to the AHL or the juniors, but really working on their game with the goal to make the NHL and become a consistent player in the next couple of seasons. It was great to have you boots on the ground there, and we appreciate all this insight and perspective. I think a lot of that stuff is really good, and the fans will definitely appreciate that, especially if you're a fan of the Canadiens, Maple Leafs, Senators, or Winnipeg Jets. Let's wrap this episode up, Bukes. Let's talk about kind of the future of the NCAA and the CHL. We got a couple big guys coming over from the CHL to NCAA this season. We look at Gavin McKenna, the presumed first overall pick in the 2026 NHL draft. He came over from Medicine Hat to Penn State University. We have Porter Martone making the transition to Michigan State this upcoming season. Another top pick, Keaton Verhoeff, is going from Victoria to North Dakota. What are your kind of thoughts on not only this season, but kind of the future of what that looks like in the NCAA, as well as like how the CHL is going to be able to compete, but also too, the USHL used to kind of be one of the top leagues in that regard too. And now what's their kind of status in all this as well?
Yeah, I truly believe that this season, Keith, is going to be a case study. I think a lot of front offices are going to strategize differently coming out of this season. This year, it's kind of like the grass is greener potentially on the other side type of trial, if you will. And players like Gavin McKenna and Keaton Verhoeff, it's interesting to me because in the most important year of their career so far, which is their draft year, they've made the switch from major junior hockey to the NCAA. Now, Gavin McKenna, on one hand, has hit it out of the park already at Medicine Hat and been all world, as everybody knows. Verhoeff doesn't have as much mileage as McKenna, playing in Victoria. He's played less in the WHL, one full year, and he was very good. Don't get me wrong, but going to North Dakota, which is, as you know, a very hockey-rich market there. Everybody goes to games in North Dakota, and I love going to games. The best arena in all of college hockey, in my estimation. And I'm interested to see how they're challenged physically by the bigger, stronger players in the NCAA. How that affects the outcome of their game, how they make adjustments. We'll see how that goes. Gavin McKenna, obviously, the all-world talent offensively, he'll immediately start to draw comparisons to like the Macklin Celebrinis when he was at college. And, if he struggles a little bit offensively, people are going to be saying, well, is he as good as that? And does that move the needle more for Verhoeff if he's doing very, very well in the back end? So McKenna is a consensus number one to start the year. Keep an eye on it, though. You never know. Can I go to I want to go to the CHL. I want to kind of a button on the top of the draft here before I get to the USHL question. And that is in the CHL, the yin to the yang. You're looking at players like Ryan Robrook with the Niagara Ice Dogs, a big rig that's a power type of a body. He's not punishing physically. He's just a big human who knows how to put the puck in the net. Okay, so he's going back to Niagara. Ryan Lynn, who's a defenseman in the Western Hockey League with the Vancouver Giants, he's a two-way transitional guy, more transitional. Power play quarterback, how are they going to, what's their level? What's their mark got to be for NHL scouts compared to some of the guys that are going to college, right? How are they going to manage that? And then you get into Europe where you got a couple of great Swedes in Ivar Stenberg and Viggo Bjork who are playing in Sweden. And those guys too are top 6 picks, and they're going to be playing in either the J20 or the SHL in Sweden. So what I'm trying to project for our listeners is that you got the NCAA element, you got the CHL element, and then you've got the European element. And then, you start kind of peeling it back even further from there to get into the USHL players. So a lot of moving parts. That's why I'm saying it's going to be a case study, and everybody's going to have to do more homework, I believe, this year, or at least tweak the way that they approach their thought process and make sure there's no bias involved with how you evaluate these players. As far as the USHL, the USHL's got a fantastic model going there. I think that they're just going to be fine, and so is the CHL. I actually believe that there's enough players are scattered around the world, as long as that the international transfer agreements are in place, that we should be giving as many opportunities to as many players to play in as many leagues as possible to maximize their potential. I think the USHL is going to find enough players to do that. The CHL will do the same. some of the USHL guys will come to the CHL. And then there's going to be some underbelly guys playing prep school or maybe high school hockey in the United States that'll go the USHL route right away. So I think everybody's going to be fine, but there's going to be some hills to climb on occasion.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Like you mentioned, right? If Gavin McKenna ends up struggling at the beginning of the year, is that going to hurt his draft stock? He had 129 points in 56 games for Medicine Hat last year, including 38 points in 16 playoff games, which is just absurd. But at the end of the day, he probably maxed out what he can get at that league. And so maybe trying his hand at the NCAA will only help his development. And whether he struggles or not, I think it's just going to be beneficial for him to learn to play kind of a different style. And he might not dominate the same way that he had in the juniors, or he might, and then his draft stock might even skyrocket even more. But I think it's only advantageous. And then also, I think from like a U.S. fan's perspective, I think getting some of these elite talents closer to home and having them maybe on TV more, as opposed to, it's tough to watch juniors in the U.S., unfortunately. I think maybe being able to watch some of these college hockey games will only intrigue fans more and kind of get more people interested in the younger hockey game, because then you have World Juniors coming up in December. That is one of the best tournaments, if not the best tournament each year in and year out. And so I think that's only going to lead to the excitement of that tournament for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's being hosted in Minnesota this year, like in Minneapolis, St. Paul, right, that's practically the center of the hockey universe in the States. Don't anybody start throwing rocks at a glass house. There's a lot of great hockey markets in the United States, but Minneapolis, St. Paul has always been a really good spot, and the World Juniors are going there. I'm excited to go there and take it all in. But yeah, you're right. I hope there's more eyeballs. Like Penn State, the Big Ten. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs in the Big Ten, right? Like you already mentioned, Porter Martone, Caden Lindstrom's going to Michigan State, Alan Valentini's a high-end draft prospects at Michigan. Penn State is loaded with all these guys. So, yeah, it's an exciting time to be a scout. It's an exciting time for the game. Things are changing. The landscape is changing, but that's okay. For me, I just want the players, the prospects, the athletes to have as many choices as possible and then maximize their ability given whatever choice they make. And come to me as a scout with the best version of yourself, and you'll be rewarded.
Yep, and the emergence of NIL has only done that for the student athlete. We'll see how it all plays
That's
out.
a whole other episode. You and I can have a podcast just on nil. We'll do that next time.
Perfect. I love to see that. Well, Bukes, this is great. Thank you for all the time. I think we got some great insight on these prospects, these younger players that are hopefully going to develop in the next few years. They're going to be household names. And then we also just got the NHL season coming up in a couple weeks. A lot of good stuff happening. College seasons, junior seasons. The KHL already started over in Europe. So hockey is back in action. We had our guy Jason Bukala on the show today. Bukes, anything you want to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, I just want to plug this for just a follow-up on the prospect tournament. Go to PuckPedia.com and take a look at all of my reports on all the prospects from the 4 teams that I took in person on the weekend. It's a little bit different than video, right? You got to be boots on the ground, see guys live. It's no disrespect to the other teams in the league. I could only be one place on the weekend, but go to PuckPedia and check out all of my more robust reports, if you will, on Senators, Habs, Leafs, and Winnipeg Jet prospects.
You heard it here first. PuckPedia.com. Let's go.
PuckPedia.com.